So then we are back with the modern understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find then the Aramaic English translation of the word being used. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can read from Yeshayahu, the 61st chapter, where then the prophet gives you then the understanding of the time of the end as per then the returning of the cities of the Messiah, as then Yeshayahu meant what then would be the Second Tabernacle services, time of restoration. So then you can understand when you read Galah, the two menorahs, meaning the two presences related with both services tabernacling. So then, from the time of restoration and reduction, then we start our study obviously from the Quran. As the first understanding we ever received is from the Quran, because it's from the first son of Ibrahim and Ishmael. However, there are many areas where we have then read these and have the spiritual content versus earthly content. We read the same way in the Israelic lineage, where then gives you the layer of understanding of heaven and the plain understanding of the earth. That's why then later when you read Leviticus, you have then obviously the substance of the feasts and you have the shadow prophetic events. Both of them related with the heavens layer, but then the Messiah explains later when he gave 2,000 years, 2 Yom creation days to the Samaritans, indicating Gentile level. So then we understand both areas. And the Quran also has a layer of understanding of heaven and layer of understanding of the earth. So let's try to understand some of these mixings, a person might say, without disregarding the holy understanding of the Holy Quran. Let's do simply an analysis of what we can understand from what is heaven's layer and then earth's layer. So then, there is a section of it we find in the Holy Quran, Sura 22 Al-Hajj. This is what it said. 22 and then verse 36. And we have made for you the camels for sacrifice as among of the symbols from Allah. In them there is much for you. Then pronounce the name of Allah over them as they line up for sacrifice. Then we then are down on their sides after the slaughter. You eat there from what comes from and live in contentment. But who then is not having this should obviously be then considered. Those who beg with due humility. Thus we have made animals at your leadership, so that you may be thankful. So what is this understanding relates then? It's not sacrifice regarding then the first tabernacle services, then practices of the Levites. You have to understand the context from where that Ishmael comes from. Where do we find then mostly the sons of Ishmael doing? They are doing trade. Where do you find them? You find the first evidence very clearly during the time of Joseph, when he was sold into slavery, and there was then a caravan of the Ishmaelites. Obviously they had camels. So when you understand then it's not sacrifice of the camels, is what the camels are bringing on their backs, so then they would give as then gifts. Because sacrifice, then the tone of what the Quran is explaining is related with a gift. So then you can understand then what the Ishmaelites are trying to portray in this understanding. And then being thankful for what then he has provided, because he said leadership. Thus we have made these animals at your leadership. So then they are indicating they do trade caravans and then bring then obviously slaves and then ivory and then salt and then gold, silver, you name it. They were bringing over those caravans, and they were also indicating they were bringing then those items they would give as gifts. So then it has no relation with sacrificing of animals, but what they bring. So then we can understand then the objective of the first son. This is the perfect understanding where you can have the proper idea of what they are doing, because whatsoever is related with the sacrificial, it's not part of the first son. The objective of the first son was the indication of trade and then relationship from country to country, and then understanding of caravans, and then fiscal notes, and then tribute, taxes. Those levels are then related with the Ishmaelites. So then later when you understand in the time of restoration, then the Messiah spoke of his brother many years earlier. The Messiah knew his elder brother would be in charge of this section, and then Daniel the prophet, being a statesperson, doing trade from nation to nation, indicated at the time of the end of the understanding of the trade of the end. So we begin to link up then the heavens understanding from the Israelic lineage through a prophet, explaining the sections of the end of the time, or the completion of this age. Then you find himself as understanding tabernacling. You find himself as a tradesperson, explaining the time of the end, indicating then, and the end of time, would people then go to and fro? Yes, they would. Meaning confusion, every time you understand to and fro, always Gentile level. No exception. So then you hear from Daniel the prophet explaining the time of the end, confusion to and fro, and then knowledge would increase. It would increase because then in the future the first son would be in charge of the most important decisions from country to country. So then you link up then what the prophet is explaining then with Ishmael. So then when you read Quran, Sura 22 Al-Hajj, you understand. Because you can't have camels for sacrifice. It's not part of the Levitical understanding. And you can't mix those objectives. The first son has his objective. The first son then has his task to do in life. The second son has his understandings and his task in life. You can't mix the creator of Ibrahim mixed up with sacrificing camels. It doesn't make any sense. So then we begin our quest then simplifying via the objectives. Then you can filter through and making sure then this understanding is related with gifts of being thankful to the Creator for what He has done for the Ishmaelites. In order to have this understanding, then the Creator has given them these animals. They are thankful because of these animals are then the transporters of the gifts. Then the Creator gave them the leadership. So fits perfectly with the first son. But then the 37, it is neither their meat nor their dam that reaches then the Creator. And there is no link with any kind of a sacrifice, because the Creator does not receive dam of camels. Those are not part of the Levitical teachings. And quite obviously the first son has nothing to do with the tabernacle service. So they should maintain with their own objectives and then only read then later the updating of the Israelic lineage, so then they understand what kind of animals were required during the first tabernacle service. So they don't get caught ignorant. Because when they understand the Creator and then mixing camels in the midst of it, it's not even part of it. It renders them ignorant. That's bad, that's ugly. It shows them they are not doing what the Messiah told them to do. Search the Scriptures diligently. Because then when those words of then sacrificing camels reaches heavens, it simply doesn't fit. So how are you going to then be in the presence of the Creator and then you have camels in your mind? It doesn't fit. So you are not fit to stand before the presence of the Creator, are you? So then, understanding then the second son, then the meat and the dam related with then camels, those has to be filtered properly. What the Quran is teaching us is the holy understanding of then the people of the Ishmaelites being grateful for the Creator for providing them with those animals, giving them the leadership of the trade, bringing then those items, and then giving a part of it as gifts. So then we can read more later and understand what it meant. So then we can start with the Holy Quran, obviously, and then from the Holy Quran, every time there is then a reference of the second son, then branches away from, and then you have to introduce then the Israelic lineage related with the leadership of the Ishmaelites. So we start then with the Quran, and then every time there is a reference of the second son, you have to branch it away from. Don't mix with the Quran. Only make a marking on it and branch away from it. Because then you understand is the objective of the second son. Then return and continue on with the reading of the Quran. So this teaches us how to read the scripture properly. Please stay tuned.